Certainly that throughout this journey through online games, we've already gone through several genres. After all, there's something for everyone: first-person shooters, puzzles, MOBAs, and many others. A genre that has been present in these games since the very beginning are the RPGs, more specifically MMORPGs. Considering the context of these videos of mine, I presume that you already know well the meaning of these terms, but to situate those who do not know, MMORPG is the acronym for Massive Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game, that last word referring to the high number of players. There have been, there are, and there will be thousands of these games. It would be possible to make a documentary just about them, and you can be sure that it would last for hours. Because of the history they have in the internet is huge and full of remarkable moments. For some people, these games are a waste of time or even something related to evil. They probably think so because these are games that are very easy to trap the player, thus leading to addiction. But cases are cases, and we are not going to talk about that here. Not today, not now. The point is that you can say whatever you want, but the fact is, this genre, like many others, has changed the lives of many people. But returning to talking specifically about MMOs, it would be impossible to estimate the number of friendships formed in the lobby of these games, memorable moments, and even couples. In one of these games, apart from the intense battles and epic stories, the humor was also very important. A game that put aside the amazing graphics and 3D gameplay to focus on bringing more content that was more relatable. And it doesn't mean it fell behind in players, quite the opposite. Actually, we are talking about a world that was already quite full. Some people said that only those whose computer didn't handle World of Warcraft would play it, and well, that the game is inferior in graphics, that's true. And that it became popular because of the limitations of some machines, well, it's probably true too. But that doesn't fall behind in anything. A game that has its value and will tell us a story of persistence and makes itself better and better every week. Yes, wanna know more about the story? Then sit back and enjoy this documentary. I'm yagovex and this is the AQ.DOC. Here we are going to go through the whole story of the rise of AdventureQuest Worlds. And note that we are not going on this adventure alone. We will also have the testimonials of my friend and former regular AQ.W player, José Gabriel, or Zero. Without further ado, let's start at the beginning. Well, it all started a few years ago with two friends in 5th grade, who after reading news about an awesome video game that had just come out, were fascinated. What game this was, we don't know. One of those kids was Adam Bohn, and they went to Adam's dad to tell him about this game and how cool it looked. You know how kids are, everything they think is amazing they want to tell you about. After listening for a while, the boy's father simply said something to them that left them in shock. The words that dictated the future were, if you like this game so much, why don't you make one? It could be said that their heads exploded at that moment, because they spent the next 4 hours in Adam's room trying to make a game. And well, they didn't. But maybe that's because they tried to make a game in Microsoft Word. After that, they started doing odd jobs like shoving snow off the sidewalk to earn money and buy programming books. Stuff that we used to see on movies, you know? I don't know about his friend, but Adam after a while started trying to create his first games, and as expected they weren't very good. Time went by and story says that he started to learn assembly, a programming language, through magazines, and after many frustrated projects thrown away, he created AdventureQuest, a single-player flash RPG game. This was in early 2002. Friends of his didn't present many positive reviews for the project, but Adam decided for the first time to publish his game on the internet. What could go wrong? He published the game on July 21 of that year and just wanted to have like 100 people playing the game, so he could say to himself, I made a game. But it turned out that after a while the game gained notoriety, receiving thousands of hits in a short time. Can you imagine his face? But the most amazing thing is that he was ready to release updates for the game every week. That's right, and so Artix Entertainment was born, which has this name because it became Adam's nickname on the internet, and also because one of the main characters in this game is a paladin called Artix. Talking more about the game, it is so basic and simple that it only has 3 classes to choose from at first, because as you advance you could unlock some others. Mage, Rogue and Warrior. The story takes place in the Land of Lore, and early on you meet Paladin Artix, who tells you what's happening there. Here in this game, while you are not reading dialogues, you are battling. The battle system is just like any turn-based RPG. You have the option to attack, cast magic, use items, etc. It can be said that it has a good variety of enemies, but the design sometimes leaves to be desired. Not just the enemies, everything. But come on, a 2002 game that started with a guy, it's pretty much to be expected. I just think that after so long with a team working, it should have been renewed. I don't know. And yes, the game is still alive and receiving updates on the same frequency. Yeah, even after 20 years. That's incredible to say the least. I had said that the game is single player, and well, for the most part it is. But it's worth remembering that towards the end of the game it is possible to do some PvP. I'm not going to dive into the story of the game, but considering that many updates, you can imagine that there's a lot. What I can say is that the game is simple and basic, not necessarily bad, because the weekly updates reflect the love that Adam has with the project. And it's amazing to think that this one was the beginning of the main game that we are going to talk today, which is marking the memory of all who passed through it. A while later, on June 9, 2005, Artix Entertainment's second game was released, Dragon Fable, which takes place after AdventureQuest. The core here is the same. The concept of battle in turns, story told by dialogues, same thing. But here you could and needed to walk through the scenarios to get where you needed to and complete your missions. But not only that, you could change your class by changing your armor and equipment. Each class containing its unique abilities. Again with the same 3 classes to choose from at the start, and a few more as you progressed. And yes, Dragon Fable as well as AdventureQuest receives weekly updates, mainly related to the story and the construction of the game's universe. But the star of this video isn't Fable either. In early 2008, AdventureQuest Worlds was announced on the Artix website. And fans went wild. All the excitement and fun of 2D combat from the humble Flash RPG now in MMO. Being able to play the game with your friends and being able to meet new people was an idea that everyone liked and were looking forward to the game's release, which took place on the 2nd of June 2008. It can be said that this date is very special for many of you who are watching. Giving the context to those who don't know it, let's talk about what AQ.DOC is about. Basically, it's the online version of AdventureQuest, but not with the same story. This one takes place after the advent of Dragon Fable. The mechanics and base of the game got even better from one game to the next, but remembering that the essence is still talking to NPCs, getting quests and killing monsters. But it can be said that here the objective is very clear, so let's get to know the plot. Right away we are already presented that the world is in war, the war between good and evil. And the battle is taking place in the city of Oaklore. Sepulchre, the king of the undead, is invading the place and the local army is doing the best to defend. After all, Sepulchre and his army are not taking it easy. They even brought a dragon that is setting fire to the entire city. Everything seems lost until a hero arrives, in this case, you, the player. And after an intense battle, Galanoth, the title Dragon Slayer, says that the army of good is winning, but they need to take care of Dragon as soon as possible. While taking care of this problem, the army of Sepulchre, that is, the living dead, goes to the next city to be attacked, because they thought the dragon would finish destroying everything. The target is actually King Altheon, because he was the leader of the forces of good. A few days passed and you and your army friends received the news that the evil army is coming to Sword Heaven, King Altheon's city, so you need to go there as soon as possible to help and prevent something bad from happening. Shortly after getting there, Sepulchre makes his entrance. Then begins one of the most iconic cutscenes in AQ.DOC. The king prostrates himself to fight Sepulchre, and you can see that the battle is not being fair for Altion, suffering a lot to endure the rhythm of the fight, until something unexpected happens. A winged black knight with shining eyes enters through the window. This is the fearsome Drakath. With just a look, he separates the fight from them both. Sepulchre indignantly proclaims that he is invincible and immortal, the evil incarnate, but even so he is killed without difficulty by Drakath, who destroys his core with his hands. And if that isn't humiliation enough, the Black Knight even brings down the Sepulchre's flying castle, with his daughter inside, who has seen her father's death and defeat. That done, he declares that the war between good and evil is over, and the era of chaos begins. He looks at the king and humiliates his current position, helpless, and says that the only thing he can do now is watch him and his 13 Lords of Chaos destroy everything. And so begins the first and main saga of AdventureQuest Worlds, the 13 Lords of Chaos. This is all told in the first levels of the game. As soon as you create the account, you already have the first cutscene, so it's like the tutorial. The game induces you to continue the mission of the saga, those present in the Book of Lore. There is also possible to see all the other side quests, emblems, and the game's wiki.
There's a story in the game, right? There were the 13 Lords of Chaos, and each Lord had a little story, a map, several specific maps. You had to progress the story of those maps.
To continue the saga, you talk to King Altion. He shows that he is worried because Drakath is very dangerous. So he tells us to see what happened to the girl who fell with the flying castle. From there, the player is free to do whatever he wants. So let's take a look at the game's mechanics. From the beginning, the game already had a high number of players, as they came from previous game. Let's start with the classes. As I said, when you start the game, you can choose one of the 4 initial classes: Warrior, Rogue, Mage, and Healer. Each one has its unique base stats, and of course, unique abilities as well. And by the way, the game's combat system works like this. Double click on the enemy and you start attacking it. You can use your 5 available skills. Simple and objective. The stats are the same as you find in any RPG game. However, I cannot fail to mention luck. This impacts on several other mechanics, such as critical damage, hit chance, and evasion chance. And believe me, these things are very important in this game, because you can have more than 100 chance of success. That is, it is more than sure, because 100% chance is not enough. Classes are defined by armor, and the initial ones branch out to others that you acquire as you progress. Just like in previous games. Some examples are the Ninja class, Berserker, Acolyte, but there were also classes that were not linked with the others and present completely different mechanics, like the Dragon Slayer, Oracle, Necromancer, which is basically the class that everyone likes, but it's really hard to get. I must also mention the legendary Pyromancer, Terror of Noobs. It is easily the best and most OP class in terms of PvP. But that strength also compares to the difficulty of getting it, as in addition to having to complete a super long quest, you also had to do daily quests for almost 2 months to get it. These special classes were obtained through the reputation system. Basically, according to a reputation in a certain place on the map, that is, in a city, kingdom, etc., were increased, you would gain new quests, daily and normal ones, and also the lore-related quests of the region itself, which, when completed depending on the region, could give you 5 or 6 ranks of reputation. Since it was necessary rank 10 to obtain the classes, you still had a few long days farming those same missions. It is worth mentioning that you have your account level, but also each class has its own level progress, so you can level each one individually. Whether that's good or bad, it's up to you. Some classes became very iconic, either because of their potential or simply because they are convenient. The Necromancer, for example, is the class with the most sustain in the game, because it can steal life. Or the Shaman, which is the only class that damage has no limits, literally the biggest damage in the game. That's because its ultimate marks the enemy for 1 minute, increasing all damage exponentially with each skill. And you know the best part? The cooldown is less than the duration time. And you think that's not enough? This ability also negates any chance of the target to dodge any attacks or crit. Balanced! Why are you crying, Rogue? But of course, the player lives not only on spells, a weapon is always welcome. Like every good RPG, you can find several types of weapons, from swords, bows, maces, staffs, etc. There are 3 types of damage from them: fixed damage, stable and unstable. As the name says, fixed can only give a fixed number of damage, so it will always be that same damage. Stable is very consistent damage. It can deal a number of damage between 2 close numbers, like 150 to 170, for example. The unstable ones are very different numbers, like the Rivers of Nugath, which is literally the most used weapon in this game. It could give from 1 to more or less 500, depending on the enchantment level. This demonstrates that the only thing that matters in a weapon is the appearance, because as you can see, even though the weapon could deal 1 damage, the fact that it is badass is worth it. This is one of the legendary weapons. This term is not used in the game, but I'm basically referring to weapons that you need a lot of willpower to get, to say the least. One another example, remember when I mentioned that the Ardix is a character in the game that kind of represents Adam? So, the Paladin has an iconic golden axe, and if you think about having a replica of it in your inventory, my friend, be prepared to spend hours, no, days in front of the computer. In short, you need to have a specific item in your inventory to buy it from a specific store in the game. The problem is that to have this item, you have to do 2 quests to kill many monsters. The quests consist of you picking a large number of items that have little chance of dropping from enemies. For example, 300 bone dusts that is dropped from the undead. For Minecraft players, this sounds little, but believe me, in this game, this is a lot. And as I said, there are more items per quest. Just look at the list of so many things to get Ardix's axe. But wait, do you think this is the hardest weapon to get? The rivers I mentioned earlier have these requirements. This takes lifetime to get.
I was in Pirates, it was an XP farming map. It wasn't like I wasn't playing for a long time, I was sort of playing well. I was at level 30, 35, 40, it was already close to the maximum level at the time. Then I saw a guy with these swords, which is actually like a giant dagger, and I was like, what a cool sword. I thought, bro, how did you get it, man? I asked. The guy stopped killing the monster and said, so bro, you need to do this and this. He said a lot of things. I understood nothing. So I thought, okay man, I'll take a look. Then I entered his character page, saw the item, saw the quest I needed to do, and thought, whoa, but it's just that all I need? I thought it was like 6, 7 items. It's going to be easy. Oh man, what a mistake. What an absurd mistake. When I started to get them, I realized that each item you get in a specific quest, so there was a quest that dropped all of them, but it was like bizarre. You spend the whole day farming and take 3 items out of 5,000 you needed. In addition, within this quest where you got these items, you could get, for example, more than you needed. That is, let's say I already had 50 titan gems and I don't know what else. I already have 50, but there's a chance I could complete the quest and get another one. And I don't need anymore, you know? So like, instead of that, I didn't get what I needed. I played a lot. I think it took more than 2 months for me to finally finish the quest, you know?
A curiosity is that there is an axe in the game called Green Blight of Destiny, this gothic-like one. It was once the strongest weapon in the game when it was released, because it did 30 more damage to chaos-type monsters. But this was so unbalanced that it only lasted a week. Finishing on the weapons in terms of armor, as I said, they are what determine the class. So there aren't many, but there are several cosmetics, from clothes to accessories, and I tell you, in this game people take appearance very seriously. Let's just say that looking strong is more important than being strong in itself. Another very important factor in raising your power level is enchantments. Each equipment can be enchanted with 1 scroll. At first there are 7 types of scrolls: Fighter, Thief, Wizard, Healer, Hybrid, Lucky and Spellbreaker. Obviously each one gives different status, but I won't go into that. As I said, these enchantments are in the scrolls, which can be bought in the store. In the past you even had to go to a specific NPC to get them, but nowadays it's much easier. But there are also special enchantments. And I say special because they are more difficult to get and are very specific. Like the Adventure, for example, that it's not possible to obtain the scroll. The only way to get an item with this enchantment is by dropping it already enchanted. But if it did, it would be the average of all 7 common enchants, minus Lucky. Another example is the Blade of Aoi, which is also the name of the weapon needed to get it. I say get because after having this weapon in hands, you can enchant other weapons with it. This enchantment has a chance, when performing an attack, to trigger a special attack among 5 of your choice. They are Spiral Carve, Aoi Blast, Health Vamp, Mana Vamp, and Power Word Die, which is clearly a reference to D&D. And this one in particular has only a 0.002% chance to proc, but of course the skill is basically insta-kill. It's like these special enchantments are some kind of DLC, and there are some that even fell into oblivion, like the One-Eyed Gem, which came from a very old event in the game. It is very rare to find someone using this enchantment. Now let's pay more attention to our inventory. Apart from all the weapons, equipments, classes and enchantments, we can also carry items, most of which are useless, in terms of directly impacting the battle, as they are just materials for other things or just something that you must deliver to another NPC to complete a quest. However, there are also consumables, but most of them are not very useful either, like life and mana potions for example, which after a certain level are irrelevant. But there is one item that is quite interesting to say the least. I'm talking about a simple piece of meat. That's right. But don't underestimate it. This ham simply doubles your damage for 15 seconds, and you don't need to be a video game genius to know that this is really good. And well, that can only mean one thing: the game implies that vegetarians are weaker. If you don't like it, complain to Artix. For a game that receives weekly updates, of course, events are a frequent thing. And I can say that the AQ.DOC events were really cool. The Christmas event lasted the entire month of December, but each year was something different. It could be test your luck on scratch cards, doing missions to win special clothes, or something like that. The Halloween and Easter events also followed this path. Each year Artix Entertainment prepared something different, and it's these things that we see how much the company cares about the game. And we are not just talking about seasonal events. A special event was on the 4th anniversary of the game, in which special missions were added. In these missions you joined sort of a evil organization, and you did missions for this organization. It is worth saying that this was one of the most acclaimed events of AQ.DOC, and many players talk about it to this day. So much so that it was relaunched in 2021, and the game had a spike in players that didn't catch up for a long time. As you can see, the game is divided into scenes, and to go from one scene to another, just click on the arrows. So no, the camera isn't free. Each place had its scenes and of course allowing connections between one map to another. Some maps players know like the palm of their hand from spending so much time there, like Kilgore and Battle 1, which are the places where people go to hang out and talk. And in the old days people also stayed in Ballyhoo, which is basically a place with an NPC where you can see ads in exchange of 1 AC or 500 gold. In the past this value was something relevant, even more at the beginning of the game, and the best thing is that you can do this 5 times a day, so like it was very useful. And after seeing all the ads, people would be there chatting away and making new friends. And man, how nostalgic these places are. Pencil Puddle, Northlands, Sword Heaven, and how could I not mention /join newbie. AQ.DOC players, hold back your tears, I know how nostalgic this place is for you. These slimes, the slime staff, the Ark Hut. This one was basically the old game tutorial, and also the first zone where you farmed and did the missions. Anyway, because of this, it is an extremely nostalgic place for those who played this game in the past, you know? In the golden age of gaming. Well, it's better for me to keep going because otherwise there is going to be a lot of grown men crying. The next place I'll mention is Managolan, and man, here was crowded all day long. There was even a way to get here, but normally people only teleported to those who were already. It was well attended because it was a relatively easy quest and gives a lot of stuff, great for farming. And speaking of farming, this is a touchy subject for AQ.DOC players. You see, let's agree that in most MMORPGs, what we do most is kill a certain number of enemies to get a better item, which we use to kill other monsters to get other items and so on. To some, hearing this might be disrespectful, but you have to agree that a lot of these games are like that. And in the old days in AQ.DOC, there wasn't a good place to farm. In fact, there was only one, here at Managolan, if you were a free player. because people who spent money on the game did have other opportunities. Over time, other quests and good rooms were created to gain levels and items more quickly. And well, obviously all this ended up also bringing another strategy, if you know what I mean. Bots. Yeah. Basically, people used programs to let the character farm automatically, and we expected that would happen, because you needed to farm a lot in the game to become strong, along with the fact that the quests were very repetitive. That is, it was easy to program the sequence of events to be repeated. What? Most AQ.DOC quests go to X place and kill X enemies. Talking about using bots is kind of a taboo in any game and it's no different here. But kinda funny cause most players use it, but when it comes to the subject they give that silly smile and change the subject. But well, not to leave it like that, I can't fail to mention another place that people used to farm, Crash Site. Man, here was also crowded all day long, with a lot of people killing these robots and everything, but while the mana golem was used to farm items and XP, this one was to farm gold. At the time, the goal of many players was to get 100k gold, because there was some very cool items that cost that price. Oh, and by the way, this map held one of the biggest secrets in the game.
The Crash Site map. When I played the game, nobody called the maps by the name actually, you know, we used to say things that were on the map, etc. For example, this map was the robot map, right? Everyone called it that at least. You could even get a class with the big robot, it was pretty cool. On a map that has nothing to do with it, like in one of the rooms on that map, nothing to do with it, there was a button on a machine and if you clicked on that button you got an item, like, you know, completely how would you find out without tutorial, right? Then you got an item that was, I think, the decoder of something, I won't remember now. But it was an item that was used together with another item that you took on another map, nothing to do. You get the coordinates of a unique place, mysterious within the game. You went to, I think it was Saloon first, and you talked there with J6. We talked to him and said that we wanted to help him. He asked us several questions, I think 3 or 4 questions, like, yeah, who am I, who is my enemy, who is I don't know what. And if you get the answer wrong, he becomes a boss and instantly shoots you. It's like 8000 damage and you die instantly. It was bizarre. After you answered the answers correctly, he would give you some other things and stuff, and you could go to a place called Hyperion. And that was the real secret place, which could only be achieved that way. And yet you had to get another item to disable the 2 turrets that were in front of the door there. Otherwise you wouldn't pass because they also insta-kill.
Due to so many events that the game had, it is natural that many of their maps were forgotten, such as the One-Eyed Doll, which was part of the encampment I mentioned earlier. This was a very special event, since it was part of the only ones that featured special sounds. That's because this map is the result of a partnership with a band of the same name. It is very underground and this event at the time helped a lot in the promotion. The band's vocalist became a character in the game that can be found on the map. Awesome. And well, technically I've already kind of said everything that's in the game. One thing I realized during this documentary is that no matter how much I talk and give information, I'm never going to properly describe the whole feeling of what it was like to be a part of it. But calm down, that there are still things here to be commented. Like for example the community of the game. You could say that the AQ.DOC community was pretty unique, you know? Because like, this game isn't of the most common ones. A 2D MMORPG in Flash? It certainly has its niche. Do you know when you were younger and you were addicted to a game and when you weren't playing, you were watching videos of it on YouTube? Yeah, people made a lot of videos of this game and believe it or not, most part wasn't even gameplay, but tutorials on how to do a certain mission and such. That's because the wiki was only in English, and not to mention that it's better to see someone do it than read an entire article.
Man, when I was going to do quests, like the lore ones, the story ones, advancing the story, then I had to look at tutorial, because, you know, I didn't understand English, I didn't know anything. Then they were writing, do that thing, in English obviously, do that thing, so what is that thing? Then I had to find out that it was going to another map, clicking on some little blue arrows that had nothing to do with the story, and then going back, you know? How was I going to find that out? There was no way, especially on YouTube, man. It was really cool, because, like, I don't think anyone had a microphone at that time, or if they did, they didn't know how to use it, because people used to put on background music, usually that one Transformer song, you know? And then the music was blasting, and then the guy opened the notepad and typed, "Hello YouTube guys," spent half an hour just typing, then go to the game and show what we had to do, and you were like, why didn't you took so long to show? And then you know, it was kind of irritating, but it was cool.
Apart from the tutorials, there was also another type of video very present when it comes to AQ.DOC on YouTube, the music videos. These are works of art. When I was researching for this video, I saw about it and I thought it was really funny, because actually this is something that was present in any online gaming community at the time. This whole culture has a lot of history and content, and maybe it deserves a video of its own. But back on the AdventureQuest ones, I can't say if there's classic MVs, because if you search for them on YouTube, you only find some with very few views. I think most were excluded due to copyright. After all, at the time they were made, people didn't care about these things. Yeah, all these things mark the time we played the game. All these good things have a special place in your hearts. But it's very common when we look back at the past, only remember the good part and forget the bad stuff. And yes, this game has flaws. Several, to be exact. Let's see the factors in which the game community itself was most bothered and still bothers today. So I'm already saying that these things are not necessarily what I think is bad about the game. Disclaimer done, let's start with the art. Calm down, I know that many people love the aesthetics of these games, as they are very special to them. But what I'm going to talk about here is the lack of consistency. Some items in this game looks like a true work of art, weapons full of details and lights with an incredible design, but in contrast they go together with old and outdated items, which look more like a MS Paint drawing. And not to mention that there are many items here that are the same as you saw earlier, just changing the colors. Repeated items are not a good thing in gameplay and undoubtedly affect immersion. But if there's one thing about this game that is practically a crime in role-playing games, it's that if you're doing a quest, and even if you complete it, let's say kill 10 skeletons, let's assume that's the mission. There you go and kill the blasted 10 skeletons. It will appear there in the corner that the task is complete, and that you just need to go talk to the NPC to finish the mission for good. If you exit the game before doing this, when you come back your progress has gone to vinegar. Yes, you need to do it all over again. In this example, only 10 skeletons may be little, but imagine bigger quests. This game does have quests quite big, and some are quite tedious. And regardless of whether it takes more time or not, it's an RPG! This happens because the dead enemies are actually sent to a tab called Temporary Inventory. So yes, the temporary lives up to its name. The game doesn't save your progress between sections. You can't log out to take a break and come back later, because then you lose your quest progress, and you have to start it all over again. Go there and talk to NPC and get the task once more, and believe me, some NPCs are in very far places. Another thing that players and fans of the game complain about is the problem that Artix Entertainment has in innovating the content. Summarizing this plot well, players say that whenever the company brings a new event, it is based on spending hours killing the same monster for a cosmetic item. And of course, I couldn't fail to mention this, the pay-to-win factor. Actually, that's not even the best term here. You can almost call it pay-to-play. The game has a monthly subscription system for members, which allows the player to use new weapons, armor, items, accept new quests, and of course, all this equipment were better than what you could find naturally in the game. But hey, pay attention to the fact that I said that being a member you could use this equipment, because that doesn't mean you couldn't get it. And you want to know the problem with that? Well, a player will be walking around doing quests and killing monsters until one of them drop a super cool weapon. Wanting to use it, the player opens the inventory and looks for the blasted weapon. And when he finds it, he discovers that he cannot use if not a member. The game opens a screen warning you of this and asking you to subscribe to the service. Do you see how bad this is? The game puts an item in your own inventory, but won't let you use it unless you pay. At the moment this video is being produced, the subscription is on average $7 per month. Speaking the truth, I think it is a fair value, but the problem here is that the game gives the impression that most things are exclusive to subscribers. At first, the game claimed to be free, but the truth is that this is only up to a certain point, not in a direct way like WoW, which doesn't allow you to progress after level 20, but in a way that you won't get much stronger after a certain point. Or you have to invest a lot of time for a minimal stat change, of course if you don't put your hand in your pocket. But again, we are talking about an online browser game, it is to be expected. In fact, every Artix games follow this pay-to-win line. I'll give an example of an armor from Dragon Fable. You had to buy each set of it separately, but the catch here is that you could only buy one part each 6 months. Yeah. But you know, even with all these flaws, the feeling of playing the game is very unique. I think the feeling comes from the humor of the game. In fact, this game is very jokey. Some areas were created just to have a funny little animation. Like this one, for example, where you knock a toilet down a hill with someone inside. The humor of this game was pretty silly, to be honest, but it was still honest. It was fun. As you know, in 2020 Adobe Flash was completely discontinued and, as I said, AQ.DOC was made in Flash. But calm down, the game did not die. I mean, it was not discontinued at least. Because that is how Artix Launcher was born, where you can play not only AdventureQuest Worlds, but also all other Artix Entertainment games. And yes, after AQ.DOC other games were released, and we'll talk about them now. In February 2008, close to the launch date of AdventureQuest Worlds, AQ.DOC was released, but it is worth remembering that this game already had a beta since 2006. Describing it is a bit complicated, as it is a mixture of the single-player style, but with possibility of battling PvP from the first games, with the variety of classes from AQ.DOC. But of course there are not that many. To tell you the truth, it is much more focused on PvP than on story, and also has the differential of having a sci-fi vibe. In terms of battles, it can be summarized as the usual style but more complex, because while in AQ.DOC the character can only have 5 skills, here you have up to 25 action options on your turn. Some item art in this game is very detailed, but the line art is quite dated. It's a very niche game and made me understand that it didn't have much repercussion. In 2007, that is, before AQ.DOC, MechQuest was launched, a futuristic RPG with mechs. It is important to make it clear that this game is not online, you play it alone. The first thing I want to comment here is how beautiful the art and animations of this game are. Imagine the work to make all these very detailed mechas at the time. Cutscenes and well-animated battles. Seriously, you can't complain about the visual factor of this game. Here you can change your mecha's weapon either on both sides of the hands, on the shoulders or on the head, and it has a wide variety of weapons, thus giving you the possibility to create your own combos. As the game progresses, it gives new ramifications to the story, and believe me when I say that it is pretty big. Sadly, it's kind of a forgotten game from Artix Entertainment, but I can say that it's still fun to this day. Well, in 2013 it was the turn of Oversoul, Artix card game. And I'm already telling you that this one flopped badly. In short, here you use cards to choose your character's attack and bonuses. And throughout the gameplay you even find some nice little mechanics, but nothing too absurd. The game is focused on PvP, but good luck finding someone to battle these days. And coming to the most recent game, released on October 19, 2016, AdventureQuest 3D. As you can imagine, follows the same setting and story of AdventureQuest Worlds, but this time in 3 dimensions. The game was created with the intention of evolving the series graphically, and also becoming the main game. That is, in theory people would drop AQ.DOC and migrate to AQ 3D. And in practice it wasn't like that. But look, the game wasn't a disaster. On Steam it has great grades and a lot of people played it. Actually, I even think that many got to know Artix Entertainment because of this game. But to say that it replaced AQ.DOC, that didn't happen. And of course, some people even thought his arrival was bad, like AQ.DOC players thinking that the new game was really going to replace the other one, and old school MMORPG fans pointing out several problems that AQ 3D had, because yes, it has its flaws. If I were to mention the biggest one for me, it is the walking simulator factor. We're talking about an open world game in which you really have to walk from point A to B, and let's say that the point B is not that close. Added to this is the fact that most quests are go to X place and talk to NPC, then come back. Yeah, But to balance that out, a good point is that it has the same humor as AQ.DOC. Well, I mentioned some Arctic's game, but note that there are others beside these, but I decided to talk only about those that market the company's timeline, or that have a connection with the AQ.DOC universe. Even today, there are even mobile games, check it out. However, I cannot fail to mention a specific game, a game that was discontinued by the company, Hero Smash. Hero Smash was another superhero-themed Flash MMORPG game. The gameplay style was exactly the same as the other games, changing scenes and killing monsters, but I think the biggest difference here is the game design, which follows this toonish style, which can be clearly seen in the characters. The game was discontinued in 2015, and when that happened, several players were stunned and complaining a lot on Twitter, giving testimonials about how the game was important to them and that it didn't deserve to be treated like that, but there was nothing to do. And well, here's my consideration for the game, and we also end the subject of other Arctic's Entertainment games here. Let's go back to the start of the show. After having said all that, if there is one thing that can sum up AQ.DOC is grind. Yes, I'm sure many of you are already familiar with that word. After all, these days is becoming very popular among young people. But for those who don't know, basically it is doing a repetitive task for a long period of time in order to benefit from its fruits, as nowadays is used to refer to focus on work and making money, or in the context of online games, farming to get stronger. The game boils down to that. If you want to get a stronger weapon, you have to kill several enemies of the same type, as the chance of getting the weapon is low. If you want the special event item, you have to grind it, because the item costs 100 fragments, but you only get 20 per day. Do you think it is bad? Know that almost everything in this game is like that, but that's not necessarily a problem. After all, most MMORPGs are like that, so it's average. It's just that, for real, sometimes Arctic's fails to innovate content. It feels like the grinding AQ.DOC is bigger than it should be, but that term doesn't reflect all the fun it gave us, or the friendships made by these lands, and the thrill of dropping a rare item. But you know, even so, you could say that this is all a story about not giving up. I don't mean spending hours grinding, but the story of Arctic's Entertainment and AQ.DOC, the story of Adam. Imagine the difficulty he had in the beginning to learn how to program, without a video on YouTube or an online course. All he had were magazines and with luck an online forum, and even his friends criticizing every game he made, each one got him better and better, gradually increasing the quality level, to then create the monster that AQ.DOC was. Undoubtedly, this game deserves to be remembered throughout the story of internet, and Arctic's, your name is in the legends of the great World Wide Web, for not giving up on your goals and for living intensely. After all, he really is a guy with style. He even gladiated at his own wedding. It's envy. So that's it. If you've come this far, I guess AdventureQuest Worlds has a special place in your heart. That means something to you. I don't know if this documentary touched you in any way or if you even liked what you saw, but know that this was my way of not letting this game be forgotten. AdventureQuest Worlds documented. Hey, as usual, it's me here at the end of the video, as if you hadn't already spent an hour listening to me to talk. But I'm here to, of course, thank you for watching until the end. I hope you enjoyed it, because I don't know if you know, but these videos take a lot of work to do. So know that your like and sharing are very welcome. We can take this whole discussion for the comments. Write there what AQ.DOC was for your life, and you can be sure that I will read it. If you like this type of video, consider subscribing to this channel. That's it. Thank you, and stay with God.